like to welcome you to the Elders training. This is a special initiative to equip local elders for service in the local church. My name is Russell C. I am a member of the Oakwood University faculty. I came to Oakwood in 2010, and prior to that I served 30 years as a district pastor, as a senior pastor, as a departmental director. And part of those years serving as a departmental director, I developed the special training program for local elders, and for about 12 years. We went throughout the conference sharing and equipping local elders to be more effective in their work as an elder. If you are watching this video, it's more than likely that you are a local elder. And in the case of, if your experience is like most local elders, the church saw something in you, a spiritual spark, the ability to teach, maybe to preach, the way that you interacted with people, and said, let's make this person an elder. But very few times will the church have some kind of defined training to help you to understand exactly what it is that you're supposed to be about. Most of it is on-the-job training and tradition handed down from one elder to another. This presentation is a part of an effort to bridge the gap between someone becoming an elder and someone being equipped to effectively serve in that capacity. This particular training will provide an overview, a basic overview of the work of the local elder. And so at the end of this presentation, you should be acquainted with the church elders' call, what that is involved, how to know that you should be a local elder. During this workshop, this presentation, when we come to the end, you should be acquainted with the qualifications. What were the qualifications that the churches are looking for or should look for in an effective elder? We're going to look at what exactly is involved in the work of the elder, and at the end look at a few helpful resources. So let's get right in there and begin with looking at the elder's call and qualification. The first thing that is important to know about the local elder and the local elders functioning in a church is that a local elder should be called and elected. A call is God initiated, but to be elected is human confirmation. God has arranged it so that humans participate in the process of selecting leadership. That is to say that there is buy-in from the congregation. God calls, but it's important for those that the leader is called to serve also have some participation in that process. Matter of fact, the most effective means of reaching lost humanity is through the divine-human combination. It is what the incarnation is all about. That is to say, the Word, that is God, became flesh and dwelt among us, where we were able to see the glory of God through the incarnation. But it is the divine that provides the power, while it is the human that provides the relevance. You can have power, you can have authority, but you have to have some understanding of the context and the human condition in order for that power, the exercise of that power, to be meaningful in any way in service. So that not only is the elder called and elected, but the elder is called but elected. That is to say that it is possible to be called but not elected. It is also possible to be elected but not called. The difference is major. That is to say, God may call a person, but the community may be out of touch with the flow of God and may not place a person in the position to be an elder. While at the same time, it is possible for the church to look at someone, think that they have the qualifications, and elect them to serve even though they are not called. Saul is a good example of that the people saw in him the attributes of a king, the trappings of a king. But he was not the one that God chose. Now, the major question that you have as you go through this presentation is to ask yourself, am I called? Not whether or not you are elected or in a position. If you are called an election, then the will of God and the discernment of the congregation are in sync. But if you are not called, but you're occupying the position, your satisfaction and effectiveness is going to be impacted. Now, if you feel that you are called, but you haven't been elected by the church, well, think of David. David was anointed to be the king. But David, it was not until over a decade before the people rose up and placed David on the throne. But while between the time of being anointed and being appointed, David focused on being in God's will. And as we move a little later on, it's important to note that there's nothing that an elder does that actually requires you to be elected to the position. That is to say, to function in your calling. And you can be busy about the work of God until the discernment and the recognition of the congregation catches up with what God is doing in your life. But how do you understand? How do you come to a place where you validate and affirm within yourself God's call? Well, the first thing is that God is going to gift you. God is going to provide you the necessary gifts to be effective in that which God calls you to do. The second important thing is that God is also going to open opportunities for you to minister in the area of your calling. It may not necessarily be in the church. It may be in a nursing home. It may be in the prison. It may be on the street corner. But God will open up doors and opportunities for you to exercise the gift in the context of what God has called you to do. So that now that we understand the idea of the call, what the call is all about, now let's look at the qualifications of the elder. What are the things that, qualities that an elder should possess in order to be really effective in their calling? That quality or qualification can be summed up in one word, and that word is commitment. It's important, however, to define what you're committed to. First, an elder should be committed to Jesus Christ, should be sold out to Christ in desiring to please Christ, to follow Christ's will for their lives. The elder should also be committed to the care of church members or of others. That is to say that an elder should have a heart for the plight of other people and should be willing to give of him or herself in helping to deal with the problems and issues in the lives of other people. That is to say, it's not, do you understand that it's not about you, but it is about your service to others. The local elder should also be committed to church order. Leadership is always exercised in a context. Local elders function in a particular context. Paul makes it very clear that God is not the author of confusion. And so that there is an order, a process, there are connections and relationships in order for the local church to function optimally, so that an elder recognizes, understands the organization of the church and is committed to church order. Now, that doesn't mean that the elder will necessarily agree with every decision that a church makes or the direction that a pastor may be initiating, but the elder understand that their role and function is largely to serve in a supportive capacity and to work through the proper processes to effect change. Then number 4, the local elder should be committed to clearly presenting the Word of God. That it is the Word of God that is central in guiding the work of the elder, the functioning of the church, of the growing of the church members, that they may become full disciples of Jesus Christ. So the local elder should be committed to rightly dividing the Word of God. And it's in the context of these qualifications of being committed to Christ, being committed to the care of church members, to being committed to church order, and committed to clearly presenting the Word of God, that the local elder will function or work primarily in the following 4 areas. The first one is that of spiritual leadership. The second is that of pastoral care. The third is teaching and preaching. And then 4th is that of evangelism. That is to say, calling people to Jesus Christ, confronting them with a decision that has eternal consequences. Now, let's take each one of these areas of responsibility in order and kind of unpack them. First of all, the elder's responsibility is to provide spiritual leadership. What exactly is spiritual leadership? What does it look like? What are the elements of spiritual leadership? Well, first of all, leadership is simply exerting influence that would cause other people to follow what you do. Now, whether you like it or not, if you're a local elder, you are a role model. And as a role model and as a leader, you are held to a different standard. Might be unfair, but that is the reality. You cannot lead people that you do not have influence with. And your influence is founded on trust. So that the first element of spiritual leadership is servant leadership. People get very confused about what servant leadership is. Jesus said to his disciples that if you want to be a leader, you got to serve. And Jesus demonstrated that not too long afterwards in the upper room when he took on the towel and the basin and he began to serve his disciples. What servant leadership is not being a butler. That was not the epitome of Christ functioning as a servant leader. It is only an example, one example of Jesus functioning as a servant leader. He is as much functioning as a servant leader as when he is chastising the Pharisees, that he is confronting his disciples, when he is feeding the 5,000, when he is blessing the children. Servant leadership means that you put your needs subordinate to meeting the needs of others, whatever those needs may be, towards the end of helping them to reach their potential. In other words, sometimes a person may need a pat on the head, while other times they may need a pat on another part of their anatomy. So that as a servant leader, it requires that you know the people that you are serving and to be courageous enough to meet them at their point of need, even when they do not fully appreciate and understand what that is. Second, that a servant leader is visionary. That is to say, the servant leader is not always looking at what is, but is looking at what can be through the grace and the power of Jesus Christ. A servant leader is a disciple maker. Now think about it. A disciple is one who is a student of someone, who is trying to emulate that person, to learn as much as they can from that person so that they can copy their life. Now, ask yourself this question: what would your church be like if everybody was like you? When you think of it in those terms, then it has a profound impact on the way that you lead people. But the idea of a servant leader is not to hover over and to hold people hostage and captive, but to help them to grow up, fully mature, then send them forth so that they may be able to flourish and to function fully in God's calling on their lives. A servant leader is also going to be a minister of reconciliation. So wherever there is conflict, there is division, there is hurt, that the servant leader is going to focus on creating and producing reconciliation as opposed to adding more confusion. And then finally, a servant leader will be faithful in their responsibility. That is to say that a servant leader is not obsessed with success. They are focused on being faithful to what God has called them to do. The second area, not only they're called to function as servant leaders, but they also are called to provide pastoral care. In providing pastoral care, it's important to understand four things about pastoral care. The first is that proximity is the key to pastoral care. That is to say, you have to be close to people in order to give proper care. Number two, visitation is the primary method of providing that care. Number 3, that pastoral care means that you minister discipline as a means of reclamation and not punishment. And number 4, the heart of pastoral care is meeting genuine needs. That one who has a pastoral heart is going to come close to the people, that's going to go where they are, that's going to seek reclamation, that's going to try to meet genuine needs. Then, as we understand that, then we want to now look at what does it mean to visit. Pastoral care is done primarily through coming close to an individual. Just like Jesus did not require that we come up to heaven, but rather Jesus entered into our world in order to minister to us. We are called to do the same thing as spiritual leaders and as elders. We are accustomed to members coming together to worship, thereby coming to us. But Jesus left the 99 and went out to reclaim, recover, to minister to that one sheep. Pastoral visitation is always contextual. That is to say that there is not one size that fits all, and that all pastoral visits will look exactly alike. What we'd like to do is just briefly mention a number of contexts in which pastoral care occurs. And I'd like to encourage you to look for future resources that we will be producing that will unpack and equip you to effectively minister in each of these contexts. The first type of visit is the systematic member visitation. Many churches, some more effective and more successful than others, essentially assign 2 elders, a number of families, and the elders systematically will go out into the members' homes and visit, spend time with them in their homes. That is done through various ways. Some church will organize that alphabetical, others will create geographical districts, others would create interest groups, that is to say, people with common interests to organize the church. The second type of visit, and systematic visitation, is primarily keeping up and keeping in touch with the members that you see on a regular basis. But there's a second type of member, and that is what we call an inactive member. This is a member who, for whatever reason, no longer attends church on a regular basis. Matter of fact, oftentimes you will not see them for months or even years at a time, maybe at funerals and on very special occasions. That is a different type of visit and must be handled differently than the regular systematic visit. You got a different purpose, a different goal for that visit. Then there is the hospital and sick visitation. This is when a member has had an accident, is admitted into the hospital. It may be a chronic problem that causes them to have to be at home or convalescing, is different than the inactive and the systematic or regular visitation. The fourth context is the shut-in visit. It is different than the hospital visit. Even though you're going to an institution, there is a different dynamic altogether, whereas the hospital visit is typically going to be short. In the shut-in visit, whether it's at an institution or whether it's in the person's home, you should expect that that visit may be a little longer than most of your other visits. Then there is the bereavement visit. Typically, when we think about bereavement or the bereavement visit, we think that about a death that has occurred in a person's home. But bereavement occurs as a result of many different losses that not only include the loss of life, but it may involve the loss of a job. It may involve the loss of a spouse through divorce, or it may even be a loss of a child through miscarriages. Any loss is a loss that creates pain and causes grief. Those visits are dealt with differently as well. There is another visit that is the crisis visit. Someone's house may have caught on fire, or even someone may have even had a burglary or a robbery in their home. A child may have run away. Crisis visits are episodic. Each one will be unique. And as you enter into a crisis context, there are a different set of skills, insights that you are going to need that is different from the other contexts that we have talked about. The last visit that I would like to mention is the youth visit. Now, oftentimes when we think in terms of our systematic visits, when we think about most of the other visits that I've just mentioned, we think in terms of adults. But I have discovered that when you are intentional about reaching out to the young people and seeking them out, going to the home, looking for them. You will be sowing seeds into the future of the church. Matter of fact, many families are surprised when you show up and you say, "Well, I'm not here to see Daddy or Mommy. I'm here to see Johnny." Sometimes youth visits can occur when they're having activities at school. What do you think would happen if you made an appointment and just showed up at one of the young person's schools during lunchtime and said, "I want to just sit down and have lunch with you"? That is going to be a visit that they will probably remember the rest of their lives. But it's not just a matter of showing up, but it's what happens when you show up. So we'll talk about that in another presentation. The work of the elder is not only to be a spiritual leader and provide pastoral care, but the work of the elder is also to proclaim the word. And to be a proclaimer of the word, first you have to be a believer and a doer of the word. The power of your preachment is going to be found in the conviction in your voice that you believe what you are saying. Not only do you believe it, but that you are committed to it enough to order your life according to the word. Now, is that to say that the only thing that you can really preach about is what you've gotten the victory over? Absolutely not. If that was the case, there wouldn't be a whole lot of preaching going on. But it does mean that you are striving to order your life according to what the word that you are proclaiming teaches. In order to be a believer and a doer of the word, you have to be also a student of the word. That the Bible does not yield its deepest and choicest insights to the lazy. That it's like mining for gold or digging for diamonds. You might get some dust on the surface, but you're not going to strike the mother lode until you do some digging. So it's important that if you're going to proclaim the word, you must be a student of the word. But not only to be a student of the word, you have to be a discerner of the word. That is to say that you have to be able to put line upon line, precept upon precept, so that the word that you are proclaiming is in the proper context. Jesus said to those in his day that you wrestle the scriptures to your own destruction. So it is possible to get on a hobby horse or a tangent or read into the scriptures your own bias. So it's very important to be a discerner of the word. And then number 4, you must be a proclaimer of the word. Now, the reality is that elders will have different gifts, and your gift and your passion may not be in the area of public speaking. But if you are an elder, there are times that you're going to be called upon to give a word, whether it is from the pulpit on Sabbath or on Wednesday or Tuesday or whenever you have your prayer meeting or your midweek service, or it may be in a classroom. My father, who is close to 90 now, he served as an elder for many years, and he served as a first elder for a number of years at his local church. Because of a couple of strokes, he essentially retired from being on the pulpit. But even at almost 90 years of age, he's in Sabbath school every week, teaching and sharing and proclaiming the word in the Sabbath school classroom. It doesn't matter what the context, you are called. And many of Jesus' sermons were not preached before larger audiences. Many of his most effective sermons were preached to an audience of one. The work of the elder is to proclaim the word. And then number 4, not only is the work of the elder to provide spiritual leadership, pastoral care, proclaim the word, but the elder is called to do the work of an evangelist. And that's an important distinction. Everyone is not called to be an evangelist, and everyone is not given the gift of evangelism, but we are called to do the work of an evangelist. That's what it means to be a part of the priesthood of all believers, that we have a responsibility of extending the gospel, sharing the gospel to those that we come in contact with. Now, what does it mean to do the work of an evangelist? First of all, it means that you have a personal testimony, that God has done something in your life that has changed it, that has transformed it, that has made a difference in your life. If you don't have a testimony, then you can't do the work of an evangelist. But if you have a testimony, and if God has done something in your life, then you are going to have a desire to see others to experience the joy of salvation, the same joy that you now experience. And then number 3, all you have to do is to be willing to share that with other people. Sometimes you will share it directly, and sometimes your sharing will be indirectly. Now, each one of these areas, we will be developing video presentations and trainings that will unpack these. What we're wanting to do today is simply introduce them to you. That we have, during this presentation, we have spent time sharing with you what it means to be called. Hopefully that's clearer now. We have shared with you what the qualifications that you should have, or the church should be looking at, that you are able to identify in order to affirm that call. Then we have completed or finished by sharing the work of the local elder. We hope that this presentation will have made it clearer. And I like to say sometimes when I'm talking to elders that if after going through this presentation and the materials that are contained in this DVD presentation, if at the end of it you walk away and say, you know, I'm in the wrong area. I shouldn't be an elder. God is calling me to do something else. If you come to that conclusion and you resign from being an elder, I would consider it just as much of a success as if you walk away saying that I'm in the right place and you are fired up and want to be the best elder that your church has ever seen. Yes, a world-class elder. I will be just as happy for that, because in the first scenario, if you're in the wrong place, you're going to be frustrated and you're not going to have the joy and satisfaction in working in God's vineyard. I hope that it's been a blessing for you and to you. And please let us know how it has impacted your ministry.